The legal battles surrounding former President Donald Trump have reached a critical juncture. Among these numerous legal issues, one of the most notable and contentious involves the ongoing prosecution in Georgia, stemming from his attempts to influence the results of the 2020 presidential election. The Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, has pursued charges against Trump and several of his allies, accusing them of attempting to subvert the election results. However, Trump's legal team has mounted a series of strategic legal maneuvers aimed at delaying, derailing, and ultimately dismissing these charges. These legal moves not only reveal Trump's determination to avoid accountability, but also shine a light on the broader issue of how his legal tactics are designed to stretch the boundaries of American jurisprudence to their limits. In this video, we'll delve into two significant legal skirmishes in Georgia, one involving Donald Trump himself and the other concerning his former lawyer Kenneth Casebro. Both figures are employing legal strategies designed to push the limits of the law, attempting to sidestep responsibility in a case that threatens their political and personal futures. As we analyze the ongoing cases, we'll explore the broader implications of these legal arguments, including the challenges to jurisdiction, federalism, and the power of state courts to hold former and current presidents accountable for their actions. Trump's strategy: challenging jurisdiction in Georgia. Donald Trump's legal team has been using a variety of tactics in an attempt to prevent any further action in the Fulton County case. One of his more recent moves is aimed at forcing the Georgia Court of Appeals to dismiss the case altogether on the grounds of jurisdiction. This strategy is designed to delay any further proceedings, buying Trump more time as he seeks to avoid both trial and accountability. To understand the crux of Trump's legal argument, we must first look at the decision to appeal Fani Willis's refusal to recuse herself. Trump's team had previously argued that Willis should step down from the case due to potential conflicts of interest, citing her past relationships with the prosecutor appointed to the case. However, the trial court ruled that there was no financial conflict of interest warranting her recusal. Trump, undeterred by this ruling, took the case to the Court of Appeals, seeking a reversal. But just weeks ago, the Georgia Court of Appeals issued a peculiar order, effectively putting the case on hold indefinitely. The court's order took the case off calendar, leaving it in a state of limbo without any clear indication of when, or if, the case would be revived. To Trump, this seemed like a favorable outcome, since it meant that no further legal action was imminent. However, this move left him in a precarious position, as it did not definitively end the case. Trump's response to this unexpected turn of events has been to argue that the Court of Appeals itself lacks jurisdiction to hear the case. This strategy is built on the premise that a sitting president, or even a president-elect, should not be subject to prosecution, based on principles outlined in the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel, OLC memo. The OLC memo, which has been used by Trump's legal team in multiple cases, asserts that sitting presidents cannot be prosecuted while in office, and Trump is now attempting to expand this argument to include president-elects. This is a key maneuver in Trump's legal strategy, one that he hopes will shield him from the Georgia prosecution, as well as other legal challenges he faces. While the OLC memo's principles are not legally binding, they carry significant weight in legal circles, particularly when it comes to executive power. Trump's legal team is attempting to leverage the memo's principles to argue that the courts do not have the authority to prosecute him, even in state courts. There is also an aspect of this argument that seeks to invoke federalism and the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. Trump's legal team is arguing that, as a former president, his actions cannot be subject to state court jurisdiction, suggesting that this principle extends beyond federal courts and applies to state courts as well. This is a bold, and some might argue, unprecedented legal argument, seeking to extend presidential immunity beyond what has been traditionally understood. Trump's legal team is betting that if they can get this case to the U.S. Supreme Court, they might achieve a sweeping victory that would exempt him from future prosecution for any actions taken during his presidency, or even as president-elect. However, This is a high-risk strategy, as the case could raise fundamental constitutional questions about the balance of powers between the executive branch and the courts and the interpretation of executive immunity. Kenneth Cassebro's gambit, trying to erase his plea deal. While Trump is fighting tooth and nail to avoid prosecution, another key figure in the Georgia case, Kenneth Cassebro, has also been playing a legal game designed to erase his own legal consequences. Cassebro, who was a central figure in the fake electors scheme that sought to overturn the 2020 election results, initially chose to take a plea deal with the prosecution. In exchange for a lighter sentence, Cassebro pleaded guilty to charges related to his role in the scheme to submit fraudulent electors. The deal was seen as a way for Cassebro to minimize his exposure, as he would receive a relatively lenient sentence of 5 years probation, with the possibility of the charges being wiped off his record after completing his sentence. However, now that the political landscape has shifted, Cassebro is regretting his decision to plead guilty. The basis for his legal maneuver is a challenge to the jurisdiction of the state to prosecute him for submitting fraudulent electors in federal court. Cassebro argues that the submission of the fake electors was, in fact, an action taken within the purview of federal courts, and that the state of Georgia does not have the authority to prosecute him for something that was done in a federal context. This argument is rooted in a doctrine that limits state jurisdiction over certain acts that are tied to federal courts, particularly when it involves federal elections. Cassebro's legal team is now attempting to leverage this jurisdictional argument to get the charges against him dismissed. Their central claim is that, since the alleged fraud occurred within the context of federal election law and was submitted in federal court, it falls outside the purview of state prosecution. The argument is that Georgia, as a state, does not have the power to prosecute crimes that are inherently linked to federal matters. The legal challenge is significant because it could open the door for other individuals involved in similar activities, such as the fake electors scheme, to argue that their actions should also be prosecuted under federal jurisdiction, not state law. This could have profound implications for the Georgia case and for the broader question of whether state prosecutors have the authority to bring charges against individuals involved in federal election interference. Cassebro's motion is not just about challenging the charges, it's about trying to erase the entire conviction and return to a clean slate. If the court finds in his favor, it could lead to his conviction being overturned and the charges being dismissed entirely. For Cassebro, this is not just about avoiding prison time. It's about attempting to rewrite the legal narrative surrounding his involvement in the election interference scheme. As these two cases, Trump's jurisdictional challenge and Cassebro's attempt to erase his guilty plea, play out, the broader implications for the future of American jurisprudence are becoming clearer. Trump's legal strategy is not just about one case or one set of charges. It is about creating a precedent that could shield him from any future legal repercussions and possibly set a dangerous precedent for future presidents and elected officials. Cassebro's legal battle, on the other hand, speaks to the growing complexity of prosecuting those involved in federal election interference. His attempt to have his plea deal erased raises questions about the role of state versus federal jurisdiction in cases related to national elections. Both of these legal maneuvers highlight a broader struggle over the balance of power between state and federal authorities, as well as the limits of executive power in a post-presidency context. As the courts begin to grapple with these challenges, the stakes could not be higher. If Trump succeeds in avoiding prosecution through these legal maneuvers, it would set a dangerous precedent for future political figures, while Cassebro's argument could reshape the way election-related crimes are prosecuted in the United States. As we continue to watch these cases unfold, it remains to be seen whether the courts will allow these legal tactics to succeed or whether they will hold those responsible for attempting to undermine the integrity of the American democratic process accountable for their actions. In the end, Trump's legal maneuvers may be more about evading justice than securing a legal victory. His team's attempt to bury accountability by weaponizing complex legal arguments could prove to be a clumsy attempt to manipulate the system. Whether or not these strategies succeed will have far-reaching consequences for the future of American law and politics, but one thing is certain: Trump's legal battles are far from over, and they will continue to shape the national conversation for years to come.